Hello everyone, welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, we're trying to see how to build a very simple application in Julia using Oxygen and then HTTP.jl. So unlike Python, right, Julia, unlike Python, doesn't have a lot of frameworks. In Python, we have Django, we have Flask, we have Fast API, we have Tornado, we have Bottle, we have Streamlit, we have a lot, right? But in Julia, we have only the commonest one we have is Genie, which is like Django, and then we also have a new one called Oxygen. So let's see how to work with it. So in case you like this open source software and you want to support, you can just start it here, right? Too, or you can start it here, or you can watch. Okay, so let's see how to use Oxygen to build this simple application. So in this application, I can just type in something. So Julia Web, and I can pass in, let's say 30. If I click on generate, automatically going to generate some password for me. If I click on it, you see that we have my password. I can change it to something different, like let's say hello, then I want 90 words, generate, and then you can see that we have our 90 words generated, right? Perfect. So this is our password. We'll be trying to see how to build a very simple application using Oxygen and HTTP.jl. So HTTP.jl is like request, right? The request in Julia. Okay, so let's see how to do that. So I'll just go back again to our workspace, and then we start writing some code. So I'll go back here, and then let's start writing some code. So this is the old one, so let's stop it, and then I'll get out of here. So let's start building some code. So I'm going to create a directory. I'm going to call the directory like my password app, right? Then I'll move into password app. That is what we are trying to create. A simple tutorial using Oxygen.jl. Then I'll go to Julia. So in case you don't have Julia, you can just install it on the system, and then let's start with it. So I'm going to go to my package mode, right? So there's a package mode. So if you click on this one here, as you can see, you go to the package mode, and then we have the help mode. So let's go to the package mode. Then I will want to activate display. So activate dot. The moment I just go with activate dot, we're going to create a virtual environment that we can work in. And now, so that has activated this environment, and now we have password app, the directory created, activated, as you can see here. Perfect. So let's install some packages. So add package we're installing is Oxygen, and then we also be using HTTP.jl, right? And then Mustache. So Mustache is going to be used for the Jinja templating. So let's install these packages. So it's now installing, and this is what to be using in our app, right? So we are creating a virtual environment, and then we are installing the packages that we'll be using for our application. So whilst it's doing that, I just go back to the same place that we had here. Then we'll move into my password app, which is here. And I'm going to, you can see that I just created a manifest.toml and a project.toml because we have activated a virtual environment. So I'll just go back to code, use VS Code, and then we start writing some code. So it's still installing the thing that we need. Take some time. So whilst it's doing that, I'm just going to create a file inside our location. That's finished, right? So just finish creating our packages that we need. So that is all. So I'll just go back again to the place that we are, which is here, right? And as you can see, we have our information of all the packages that have been installed and our project.toml file, right? So these are as a result of our virtual environment that we created. Okay, so let's create my file. I'm going to create my file. I'm going to go to app.jl. So this is going to be our main app, right? So let's start with it. So I'm just going to make it bigger. So using Julia, right? So using Oxygen, right? And then we'll be going with using HTTP. So these are the two main ones. And then we're going to start with it. So how do we work with it? So we're going to do the very basics, and then from there we will try and see how to build our application, right? So let's start with it. So with Oxygen, all you need to do is that you have to first create your route. So this is creating route, and like Python, right, you can actually, or like Flask, you can just do it at, right, and then get. So we have add, we have post, we have put, right, and the rest. which map to their respective HTTP. So at, then I have to specify the route. So let's go with backslash or the slash. Then I'll go with my function. Then this one takes in the request, which is going to be my http.request, because everything is built around request, right? This particular package, which is very powerful. Okay, and then I will return something. So let's return hello Julia web app, something like that, and then enter. Right, so because we created a function here, we have to call the end on it, and this macro is going to convert this entire stuff into a route that we can run. Right, perfect. Now how do you save it? So this is going to be a save. So this save is coming from Oxygen, right? So save, and then I'll specify what I want to save. So you can just go straight away with save, but if I go with save like this, we can specify the port we want to use, right? And then the route. So if I go with this, so port, then I can specify the port I want to go. So let's go with the 8001, and I'll save it. So this is all you need. So you have imported Oxygen and HTTP, and then you are saving it here, right? So let's start with it. I'll just position it side by side, or you can also do it from terminal here. But yeah, I'll do it this way. Okay, so let me position everything side by side. Okay, so this is where we work. So let's get out of this place. Now I'll do this so we have it side by side. Apologies, someone will say, why am I not using the terminal inside VS Code? Yeah, it's good, but I want to use the one from here. Okay, perfect. So we have our app here, right? Now how do we run it? So to run it, you just go with my Julia, right? And then I will just go with dash project, right? Because I'm in a virtual environment which I created earlier on, and we have my manifest.toml file, and just go with dash project and then app.jl. So this is automatically going to use the packages in my virtual environment that we created, right? If I run this, it's automatically going to spin this one up for me. And this is how it is. It's going to come with start. It's going to start on the port you specified, which is here, and then the documentation. Can see that we can have this one is going to give you the Swagger, and then there's the port is listed on. So I can just go back with this. So let's copy this one and then go to our terminal, which is here. So this is the old one. I'm going to take off this old one, and then you can see that we have our app working perfectly well, right? As you can see, right? Hello Julia, perfect. If I go to /docs, sometimes it will automatically generate a Swagger for us. So out of the box, just similar to Fast API, right? So just giving us a simple Swagger endpoint, which we can click on it, try, and then the same result is going to see hello Julia is the same thing we saw earlier on, which is quite cool, right? After the box, we have gotten this thing here. So 01, this thing that we got, we have also gotten it here out of the box. Perfect. So that is how to create a route. Now let's see the other alternative that we can also do. So there, let's leave it. The next one is that we can also go back and then return, instead of returning a string, we can also return a JSON, right? So let's go with get. Then I'm going to pass in my route. Let's give it the route of, let's say, yeah, we can give it any name. So let's go just home, then function, then the same thing we did. So request. This is going to be the method or the type. Then we can return a dictionary. So if you have a dictionary and then you return it, so dict, then I can pass in a simple Julia dictionary. So let's say I pass in something like, let's say name, and then I will pass in name, so Jesse. So this is automatically going to be serialized into a JSON, right? So this will serialize it to a JSON. So automatically, right? So that is, so we can also do this one, and then it's also going to give us JSON from this particular text that we have here, right? That is another thing you can also do with Oxygen. Very cool, right? Very cool. So let's see how it works. So I'm just going to go back to this same thing that we have here, and then because the package is still in development, if I go back straight away, we have my home, and I refresh this, we are not going to see it, right? You are not going to see it. If I go back and I go with home, that page cannot be found. The reason is that you have to stop it and start. So I think we can, if you have an idea of how to do that, you can support the project. So I have to stop it and then restart. Okay, so if I go with this option now, if everything is working well, you're going to get it here, and I can just go back here, and if I refresh, then now we have it in the format of JSON, right? So it has serialized this one and given us in the format of a JSON, which is very cool, right? If I go back here and I refresh this one, hopefully it gives us here, so that we have the home here, and if I click on it, you're going to get the result in the format of a JSON. Very cool, right? So you can use it to build your APIs in Julia. Let's try the next thing. So we have seen how to create a route. You have seen how to convert a dictionary to JSON, serialized. This is useful for APIs. Now let's see another thing you can also do. So the next thing we're going to do is that how do you render HTML? So render HTML. So how do you render it? It's very important, right? Because you cannot be building a website with just this. So let's go with get, and this is going to be, I can call this one as my, let's call it as generate. We'll be building an app. Then I'm going to pass in my request, HTTP.request. Let's, yeah. And then we will go with the end. So how do you render HTML? So to render HTML, it is a little bit different, right? Because the package is still in development. You can simply do HTML, right? This HTML is coming from Oxygen, and then if you have a content like a string or stuff, you just put it here. But this is okay, but it's difficult, right? Because most of the time you don't want to just render HTML. So let's help the project, right? Maybe later on you push it so that the owner of the package, I don't know his name, Nathan Ortega, right? Nathan will be able to add it to the package, right? So we're going to create a function to render HTML together with Mustache. So let's see how to do that. So in case you have any question or contribution, you can put it in the comment section below. So let's see how to do that. It's going to be, let's create my function, then render, let's call this render HTML. Then this function is going to take in an HTML file, right? And then this file, you can just call it like this, right? So HTML file, this is going to be a string. Perfect. And the next argument is that we also need to pass in some context so that we can pass in a dictionary of terms to be used by Jinja. And then this is going to be an empty dictionary. So these two are now going to be our positional argument, right? And then we can also add some standard stuff. The status, you can specify the status that you want to put. So by default is 200 if it's correct. Then we can also specify the headers, and then the headers is going to be the content type, which is going to be content type, and this is a dictionary, right? So content type, and this one will take in my test. We want to submit HTML, right? And then we have to specify the character set so that we will be able to get UTF-5, UTF-8, UTF-5, and then that is all, right? So this is what you are sending. Perfect. Then what we are returning is going to be http.response. We have to return a response. Perfect. So let's end our function. So now let's see how to work on it, right? So what I will do simply is that I'm going to say that, okay, if we can say that it's content, because we are passing in, we can just simply do it like this. We will add these ones later so that you see the approach. So what I can do is that, let's save this one. We want to be able to do this. So let's say render HTML. Then with this render HTML, in case I have my HTML, I can pass in here. So let's say index.html, right? And then I also want to be able to pass in context. So this is like similar to Julia, similar to Django, right? So that is the basic understanding. And then I can also pass in my status. That is what I want to do. I also want to be able to do something like this. So render HTML, then I'll just pass in my index.html like that, right? So I want to do two. I want to do the option of passing the context and rendering it, or if I don't have any context, I want to still be able to render it, right? So how do we do that? So we can simply go with specifying that, okay, if the context empty is context empty, I want to say it's empty. Julia has a function is empty, then we have to specify the context. Let's go to true. So this is true, right? So this is a simple check. We are checking if the content is empty. If the context is empty, right? If it's empty, then we do some stuff. So we want to return raw HTML without context, right? Perfect. That's what we do. So how do you do that? So if its context is empty, then I want to open my HTML file, whatever file that has been placed there. So HTML. I want to open it in read mode, right? Do file, then I want to just read it. Then I can just go with my file and I'll convert it to string, because as I said, it comes with HTML, but you have to pass in. It comes with this, but you have to pass in a string, as you see, content, before it can render. But we don't want to use this, we want to make it better, right? So that's why we are using our own function. So end, and then we can just go else. We do the opposite. So this is going to render HTML with context, right? So in that case, I'm going to also do the same thing. So IO. So you just go back with this. So if it's empty, we want to just open the file and then read it, right? And I want to create a template, and the template I'm going to cut as IO. Then I want to convert it to string. Right? Yeah. Sometimes I forget where my keys are. I want to convert it to string, right? And then we want to render it. So if we have a context, if this context is not empty and we have a context, we want to do the same thing that we did above. So I'll copy this. Right? And when I copy it, what I want to do is I want to use Mustache to help us with that. So the template is going to be my string. Then I'll pass in Mustache. So Mustache is a Julia package that allows you to be able to, let me show you what I mean. If I go to Mustache here, Julia, here, it allows you to be able to use this Mustache syntax, like Jinja syntax, in your package, so that you have a dictionary, then you pass it, then you can render it inside any text, right? So that is what you're trying to use to help us with that. So I'll just pass in the IO and I'll pass in my context. Perfect. So you're opening the file, getting the content here, then you're going to render it together with the context if it's not empty, right? Then let's end, and then now we can return HTTP dot response status we have, then the headers that we specified, then the body is now going to be my template. Let's end this. So we have a simple function. Let's close this one off. So we have a simple function that checks if our context, which is here, is empty. It just render it raw. It opens the file and renders it. If it's not empty and it has Mustache, or it has some context, we use Mustache to render it. So I have to import. So using Mustache. I don't know how to spell it. Is it Mustache? Yeah. Mustache or Mustache? Okay. Okay, so then we are going to render it. So let's try this function that we have. So as I said, the default one is that if I have some string, then it's going to open, right? So let's go with the first one here. You're going to go with the first one without any context. So this, we are rendering HTML. So let's create my HTML file. I'll go here. Then inside the same place I have, I'm going to create my HTML file. So let's go to index.html. And then this is going to be my HTML5. Then let's call this as Julia app. So Julia web app. Perfect. And then let's pass in some div. And then let's pass in some div class container. And then let's pass in some h2 tag or h1 tag. Let's call that Julia web app with Oxygen.jl and then HTTP.jl, right? So because this is a simple HTML, we're going to open it and then use this function that we created to render it, right? Well, as we said, we have to go back and then stop it and then reload it again. Perfect. So it's opening well, and now I can go back here to our Swagger. The Swagger is still there. Go back here, refresh. If everything works, there have to be no error. Perfect. And now I can just go to the generate page, and now you see that we have it here, right? Hooray! So if I go to inspect, you can see that we have the same test that I had here. The same test that we had is still being shown here, right? The same HTML stuff is there. And the advantage of this is that because we have opened a file, the nice thing is that if you have opened a file, you don't need to stop it, right? So now I can change this one from h1 to h3, and you can see the size is going to change automatically. So I save it and I refresh, so then the size has changed, right? But in case you change anything in a backend here, you have to restart it. Maybe in the future we have a fix for it. And this is the second one. This is if you change it in a front end, everything is perfect. Cool. That's nice. So we have seen how to render HTML without context. How do you render HTML with context? So with context, so let's uncomment this one out, and let's see how to do that with context. So we saw that we could return a dictionary, right? So let me copy this dictionary here, and then let's pass it here to my context. So the context is taking a dictionary, which is what we specified in our function here, right? So we are taking a dictionary. Because it's taking a dictionary, we can now pass it here as context, and then perfect, it's going to work, right? It's not giving us an error, so I have to stop it because I did something on the backend. It has to recompile. We run it again, and then you have to make sure that we send this one to our front end, right? So this is using Mustache. So because we're using Mustache, I can come back here and then put in my Mustache sentence and put in the name. So this is like Jinja in case you're coming from Flask or Django. So the name here is this key here from the dictionary, right? So if I save this one here and I go back to my application, if I refresh it, so now I see Jesse, right, which is the one coming from here. Very cool. So that is how to render text, right, to send data from the backend to the front end using Oxygen, which is very important, right? This is very important. So because of this, our function, we can now send it up and down. So all you have to do is that you have to have a lot of dictionary. It can be many keys and values, and then just send it here. Okay, perfect. So let's move on from here to another thing we can also do. Now, how do we receive data from the front end to the back end, right? So to do that, this is going to be, or let's say, receiving from data, right? How do you receive from data? So it's simple. It's not simple. It looks simple, but yeah, it took me a lot of time to figure it out. All you have to do is just go with this, right? So let's call that, say, add. Then I would go with the same function that I have, then request. Then let's say HTTP dot request. Then let's end it here. So I'll show you the first method. So in order for you to be able to receive data, right, from form data or query data, so let's start with receiving query data, right? Query params first. How do you do that? So to receive query params, all you have to do is that just go back to whatever we have here. So let's say add, or you can just call that, say, yeah, add. Then I can pass in my query, or we can call it as query, right? And when I create query like this, by default, if I want to receive query data is something like this, whereby you have, let's say, 120, or let's say HTTP dot 120 dot, yeah, can be 127.0.0.1. Then you just go with my port, right, 8001, and then with query data, just go with this option here, backslash, then query, then question mark, right, or not query data, but query params, right, and then I can pass, let's say, books is equal to, let's say, Bible or something, right? So this here, anything after the question mark is query. So how do you receive that kind of data? So by default, when you go with it, you can receive it by specifying that, okay, I want to return. So return query params, and query params is coming from Oxygen itself, and it's a very simple function. If I click on this one here, you can see it is simply, I think it's, yeah, it can be found here. Yeah, this is it. So this is a simple function of how it is, and this is the one for the HTML, right? The one we did. So we just took the same thing, the same idea that we had here, and then we modified it, right? So for query params, it's just taking the URL and then tag it, and then getting the params from it. So it's still using HTTP.jl from behind the scene. So if I go back here, I can just go back with query params. So it's going to go to the URL, right? Target URL, pick whatever thing is there, right? That is a basic understanding. That is what it's doing behind the scene. Okay, so let's do this, and I'll go back here, and then let's try it. So we have to restart. Start it again. Let's go back here. So this is working. Now in case I want to get the query params, I can just go back to the backslash and then query. Then I can pass in the question mark. Then I can pass in, let's say, books is equal to Bible, right? So anything you pass, you don't need to specify it. If I pass books is equal to Bible, so books is equal to Bible. If I go back and I do say name is equal to JCharis, right? Or you can even add more, right? And so I think it's and age is equal to 25. So that you're getting it. So anything you add to it. So let's say end place is equal to Ghana, right? Anything you add is going to pick those things out, right? That is what the query params is doing. So with that same idea, we can actually receive form data, right? So that is for the query params. Very cool and very simple. Now let's see the next one. So receiving form data, right? So you have seen how to get query params. We can also use the same idea to get form data. So let's try that one out. So I'll go with let's copy this and then continue from there. So I can just go back to our generate function. Let's go generate password, something like that. And then how do we create form data? So to create a form, all you have to do is just this option. You just have to go with my form. So we can call it as this, because this is coming, as you can see, this is coming like a dictionary, right? So this, since this is coming as a dictionary, we can now take it as a dictionary for the form data. So you must treat it like a dictionary. So we can just go with my context, or we can just give it like something like simply form data, right? Get everything from the query params. So whatever thing that is being sent from the request, get it as form data. Then from there I can now specify that, okay, I want to get the test. So I want to get a name. So it's going to be my get, then my form data, and we have to specify the thing that we want to get, so name, and then let's give a default value, right? So by doing this option here, by doing this, I'm going to retrieve this name, because this name must match, right? So you have to know what you are getting. So this name from here, I'm storing inside this variable, and now I can return it. So I can now return it here. So I can just copy this, and then let's not go with return. Let's use our render function, or we can make it like return render function. It's still going to work. Return render function. Return render function, and then we are going to pass in this name here, right? Perfect. So this is it. So we are going to do the same thing, a form, get the actual value, and then send it to our front end, right? Whatever we are sending it to. So what I want to do is I'll change this one from this to generate. Then let's create our form. This is going to be my generate.html, and then let's create HTML. Perfect. And let's create so HTML5. Yeah. Now I'll create my div, my section, class container. You can call it a section, and then article, then form, right? So this option here, now I can now put in my input type, and then the name here, this is very important, the name is going to be the name we are specifying here. So if it is like place, you also put place here, right? So name, so this name is referring to the name we are getting from our form, which is here, right? To avoid confusion, I can just do it f name. I want to get f name, and then I want to send f name here, right? So this f name must be equivalent to this name here, so you don't confuse yourself, right? So you can just leave it like that. And then we need to specify a button. Let's go to submit, type submit, and then for the action I want to specify the route I want to go to, which is going to be my generate password route, right? So this route is the same route we have here, generate password. So I can just go with here, right? Or let's make it full, backslash, something like this, right? Any of them is going to work. I can just leave it like this. Perfect. Now it's done, and I have to specify the method. The method is get, right? Get because we are sending it as get here. If it's post, but post may not work all the time. Okay, perfect. So that is how to do that. Now let's stop it, and then after we have gotten our test, we want to show it here. So I'll go back to my session again, HR. Then let's go session, article, and then div. I can spell div. And then h2, you put in our f name here, right? Perfect. So let's start again. I have to stop it for it to work. And it's going to stop the entire stuff. Perfect. And now this is everything works as expected. But for me to get the test, I have to just go back to my backslash generate. The generate was working as we saw. And then I have to add a password to it to go to the password. And now we have our form. And 0, so the reason it's 0 is that I specify that okay, the default is supposed to be 0. You can also make it empty, right? You can make it like this, so that it's empty. Anyhow you want it to be, it's up to you. Then now I can just type in whatever I want to type. So let's type in, so Joshua. If I click on Joshua, so now we have Joshua here, right? So this is how to receive data from forms, right? So all you need to do is just use the same query params we're using here to get the form data. In case you have a better method, you can also let us know, right? So that we help this project to become faster. Perfect. Something simple like Flask. And then you can see that it's working perfectly well. But the disadvantage that you can see that it's still using query params, so it's passing it here so that the person can see it. If I tried using post, but it's not working. Maybe you have another alternative, let me know. So you have seen how to receive query params. You have seen how to render HTML with context, HTML without context, how to serialize dictionary to JSON, and then the basic ones. Let's see one more thing we can also do. We can also use not just query params like this. We can also use I think it's called path params, which is going to be the same thing we had here. We can do the path params. The path params is whereby I think we do something like this. You go with your endpoint, whatever the endpoint is, and then you can pass in some values here. So let's say ID, and then let's say another something. So we can just say number, so num1, so num2, right? That is all you need. And now in case I want to run it, I can simply do this. So num1 plus num2, right? So we can just call this one as add. That is all. So this is another way. So this is a path param, I think so. Maybe I may be mistaken with the term, but there is this feature also that you can do that with it, right? So perfect. So now if I go back here, I have to stop and restart. And then when you are doing this, right, when you are passing it here, you have to also specify inside your function that you are passing this one, because these ones are not coming from the request straight away. So I have to specify, okay, I'm passing in a num1, which is, and can go just say a float 64, and then num2 is also a float something like this, right? So it's automatically calculated. So let me save it, stop, restart, and then we can, so it's giving us an error. So the part is missing a num1, right? So the reason is that once you specify it here, if you want it to, you have to also pass it here. We forgot to add it to our route. So this is how to do that. So I'm saying, okay, I'm passing number1, number2, and this I'm passing it inside this particular endpoint, and then I'm unpacking them here. So the function receives these two, and then to add them, right? So it's running perfectly well. So let's go back here, and now I can just go back to my add endpoint. So if I go back to the add, it's going to fail, right? Because it's not the correct one. Then I have to add, let's say, number 40, number 56. Now see that has added them perfectly for us out of the box. So that is another way. So you can use it to do a lot of things. If I go back and I refresh this, so we have my home, which we generated. We have the path we created here. So this is very useful in case you want to create an endpoint. So out of the box, we have this Jinja, or not Jinja, this Swagger created. I can pass in my values here, and then it's working well. Wow, this is very cool, right? Out of the box, 8. Right, very, very cool. So that is how to do it. You can actually use to build a lot of APIs. You can even use to build OpenAI, ChatGPT stuff. That is one. Now let's see the last thing we can also do. With this, we can also specify a route in a broader format, right? Like blueprint, bulk route. So with using this route is a higher order function. So higher order function that can allow us like for reuse, right? So that I can use it for a lot of things. So let's say I want to build an API endpoint. I can just go with my API, and then I can see my router. This router is coming from Oxygen. Then I can specify the path, the default path. So this is going to be /API. That is all, right? And I can also give it a tag. So tags. The tag will be used inside the Swagger. So tags, and you can call it as API, something like that. Endpoint or endpoint, whatever I call it. Perfect. That is my route. And now how do I use it? So I can simply use it like this. So add, get, then API, then I can just pass in my path. So I can add something to it. So API, say we can say API we want to add again, right? The API we want to add some number. So we want to add this again. So we can just do the same thing we did here. So let me copy it this way. Perfect. Right, so we are doing the same thing we did above, but this time we are using higher order function for reuse. And now because I've done this, anytime I want to call this endpoint, I will just go straight away with this without calling the API. So if I go with this and I refresh, we are not having it, but I have to stop it, then restart, and then it's going to work, right? So if I go back and I refresh this, hopefully it works. Okay, so that's generated it for us, and I can see that we have a whole route session called API endpoint, and you can see the name that was given. The name is here, right? As you can see, very cool. So API endpoint, and I can now pass in my stuff. That's automatically added API to it. So I can also continue with another endpoint. So let's say I want to do multiplication. So this is going to be, say, yeah, multiply, right? So this allows you to do reuse. So now, if I stop this, and I refresh, if I go back here and I refresh it, so now we have it here. So API, we have 1 and we have 2, right? You can even use post if you want, not just get. You can also use post if you want. And then let's stop it. But I hope we're able to contribute in case you have an idea of how to automatically reload it, so that I don't need to stop and restart again to watch the files for changes and do that. So if I go back here and I refresh it back again, and then if I go to, I said now this is now using post method, not get, and you can see the difference between the two, right? Out of the box. So this is similar to Fast API, which is quite cool. So I can also try, hopefully it works. And then we have gotten our result, right? So you can actually try it in different ways and build more complex and more complicated stuff. So that is how to work with this wonderful package. You can see that there are so many things you can do with it. So I would like you to sponsor, or not sponsor, but try it out. If you have issues, you can let us know. If you have better options, you can also let us know. And then you can also start it here, right? And contribute to it to make it better. As similar to Genie. Genie is also good, so that we have at least 2 in Julia, like Flask and Django, and then Fast API and Streamlit. Okay, so that is how to work with it. Now let's go back, and in the next session, let's build our app that we saw earlier on. So thank you for watching this tutorial. See you in the next session, in which we will build the app that we talked about from all that we have learned so far. So to build it, it's going to be very, very easy. So thank you for watching. See you another time. Stay blessed.